Hello, my CMP250 students. I am glad you're in the class, and I am doing these short little videos so that you'll be able to refer back to them anytime that you need to. This is kind of the first day information, and sometimes even if you're in class the first day and you're hearing all of it, you miss things, right? Our minds tend to focus and unfocus. So these are something you can refer back to. I do that because it is not just tedious, but can really be disruptive to learning when a student has an important question about getting started in the course and they can't get it answered at the moment they need it. In other words, they're doing something at 8:30 at night, but I'm at home and won't answer them until my classes finish the next morning. And so I'm going to keep these short. I'll try to keep them focused on certain things. There's not much that we need to go through. This particular video will be a little longer than the others because it is really about this class. What is this class? And trying to get into your minds the importance of this material. And I'll tell you a little story that some of you know about me as we go through. So I'm going to share a desktop 2 here. All right, so that's over here on me, but I'll try to look at you most of the time. Guess I can move my computer. Anyway, so networking, CMP250, James McBride, that's me, in case you have forgotten from other courses. Or maybe this is the first course you've taken from me and you've jumped straight into 250. Okay, so let's take a look. The world with a network focus. The truth is that we live in a connected world. Now, there's still much of our world that's not connected. We know that. And it'll become more and more connected. But when you as I've said in other classes, when you buy a device, that's what we tend to call them these days, you buy a computer, whether it's a handheld phone, even though you don't use it as a phone too much, you want that to be connected. It needs to be able to message other people. It needs to be able to gather information from the internet. So the focus is on connecting. So you can imagine that the world is focused on networking. Even though most of the world doesn't want to know how it works, they just want to use it. That underlying network system has to function and will continually be updated to function better and better. And so in order for you to really operate in the IT world, in the information technology world or information systems world, you have to have the foundations of networking. And you have to, or I should say, the more you understand it, the more of the information that's in this class, and I'm telling you, in some of my other classes, I'll go, this was not so important. In this class, it's hard to find anything that's not vital to know, that's not vital to be able to pull out of your head and use. Now, having said that, right, if you want to become a desktop support person and they make good money, you don't necessarily need to know how networking functions because you're never going to troubleshoot it. You're just going to look at it and go, oh, yeah, the networking's not working. And then you hand it over to the network person who makes more than you, by the way. And then that person troubleshoots it and figures it out. And so there are job roles where you just kind of have a really good idea of how networking works, but you don't really understand it enough to be able to go, the problem's probably here, right? And most every class that I teach, because they're technical, you're really moving towards, I need to understand this information so I can set it up, so I can show others how to use it, and so I can troubleshoot it when it's not working. And that is a large part of your job, and upgraded, right? And upgraded. So what you see on the screen here is that networking down here, see the information in CMP250, and no, I did not put everything down. These other areas build on that. In other words, as a matter of fact, this is one of the difficult things I have to do when I'm communicating with other instructors, because their information doesn't necessarily work that way. They might have this part of business that they focus more on, right? They might do that. But you could probably also just jump in and take that course without understanding a bunch of the other business stuff. Math doesn't work that way, right? There's math that builds on math that builds on math. And networking for us is that fundamental. So lots of people go, oh, well, it's a PC stuff, right? How does a PC work? How does a computer work? That's vital. It's important to know. But the truth is you can go into the environment these days, the IT environment, and not really know any of that stuff because we don't fix it so much anymore. So anyway, what's building on networking? Well, security is. If you're going to go into a security field, you can't just go in and say, I'm going to take ethical hacker. Because if you don't understand what's happening in networking, ethical hacker is going to be really hard. And there's tons of security stuff, right? There's all these different areas of security that build off of the basics of security. And that builds off of networking. So you have to understand the funnels of that. Switching and routing, that's a huge area. People that go into, that truly say they're in networking. I work in networking, computer networking. They're usually doing switching and routing, programming routers, dealing with where the switches need to be, troubleshooting those things, upgrading those things. You're basically keeping the infrastructure going. And of course, WAN technologies. The internet does not exist without wide area network technologies. That's something that we're going to look at and dig into. Pretty much every one of these areas is something we dig into. So there's tons of jobs there. Right now, these WAN technologies they're gonna come over here to routing as well, but there's a bunch of stuff they deal with in WAN networking that the standard network doesn't deal with. So there's a lot of overlap between these two. Advanced IP or Internet Protocol, digging in so far that you really understand the components of IP4 and IP6, much more than just the basics that we're going to go through that you will not feel are the basics, but they are. And understanding the advanced IP portion, those are the people that really, they get paid a bunch of money because something's wrong with your network and you've done everything you can do to try to fix it and you don't know where to go. And you call those people in and they go, oh yeah, here's the problem. You know, this thing's mashing these packets, you know, that kind of thing. And SANs, another topic that we'll explore. Storage area networks, that's what that stands for. So a SAN is just an area network designed for storage. So the protocols that they're running are different, the connectors are different, and it's designed to have the ability to be very high speed. So your server's in one place and your storage is in another place, that kind of thing. So if you don't understand networking, right, that's what I'm getting to. If you go out of CMP250 the way that most people go at it, which is, I'll just take this course like I take any other course, you are seriously going to be hurt when you try to advance that. And what'll happen to you is you'll have to back up and learn this. So in other words, you'll probably do okay in the class. You'll learn it as long as you need to, right? Then you do a brain dump and can't remember 2 weeks later what that was. That's a mind frame that people get into. And then later on, right, then you have to relearn it. You go, oh man, I didn't learn anything in that 250 class. Passed it, but yeah, there's a certain responsibility. Most of the responsibility is on you to put your frame of mind in the right place and to focus and work. And I would tell you honestly, if I was doing this class, I would spend 2 hours a day studying this information so that by the time I get to the end of the course, I am ready to be certified. Ready to actually get the certification, and studying with that in mind is totally different than I'm showing up to class and I'm taking notes and I'll study for this little test that's coming up or this big test that's coming up. And now I really don't remember that stuff. I'm moving on to the next topic, right? I tell students over and over, it's much more like math. You have to get your frame of mind in the math mode. And most of us that are in this don't like math. I don't like math, really. But one thing that I understand from having learned math is that you can't just chuck it out, right? You can't just go in the first chapter, learn that stuff, take a test over it, and then go, well, I won't need that. Well, yeah, you do. You need it in the next chapter, and you need it in the next chapter, and it builds. And that's what I'm trying to show you here is this builds. You want to be successful in your career for whatever you're going into in IT and you're not even sure what that's going to be, you've got to understand what's in this course. And you've got to really put the time in to get that done. It is no different than saying, well, I'm going to go into medicine. And they stick you in an anatomy class with a book this big. And then you take the attitude of any other course, right? I'll just study this like I do anything else. Well, you better not, right? Because if you don't understand the anatomy of the human body, there's no way you're going to do anything more advanced than that. That's what we're looking at here. You have to understand these concepts that we're getting into networking. Now, I know that that's really scary, but I'm promising you, I'm telling you, I'm not any smarter than anybody else. And if you focus and put the time in and really be honest with yourself and your learning, that you're not just doing something to get through it, but you're doing it to learn that information, which takes a lot more time, you will succeed. And that's the truth. You really will. So don't let this put you off. You are getting ready to go into information that's going to build and build and build. And there's going to be topics. And if you don't put the time in, by the time you're halfway through the class, you're scratching your head going, I just don't understand what we're talking about now. Oh, that's because in the first unit, you never truly got that information. I'm like, oh, I only spent like a week on it or 2 weeks on it. Yeah. But how much time did you spend in that 2 weeks actually learning it? Did you just show up to class, take some notes, and move on with your life? Because if that's your attitude, yeah, I'm sure you'll get a C in the class, but you won't be ready to take other more advanced courses, and you won't be ready to go out and work in the field. Now, let's finish this, and I'll give you my experience. So this is just, you take my 100 class, you already know this. This is just a little reminder. What the industry likes to see is a 2-year and AAS degree. You spent some time at a community college, likely. They don't care if it was university. They don't care if it was community college. They don't care if you did half your classes in high school. That doesn't matter to them. But you got formal education to basically what they would call a 2-year level, which is really, for most people, a little longer than 2 years, because it proves you can stick to it. It proves that you can communicate, you can work with others, you have a general knowledge in different areas. And that's important because you're not going to go in and just focus on IT. You're going to have to deal with people. You're going to have to communicate with them. You're going to have to try to understand what they're doing, and they're doing something totally different than you. And you're dedicated to learning. You took the time to do that, right? You weren't one of the people that just said, screw that. I'm not going to spend any time on that. I'm going to waste my money, blah, 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 right? So it proves to them that you're dedicated to actually getting the job done, because there's a bunch of learning. If you're going into IT, how would I put it? I have to be careful because people get insulted, even though I don't mean to insult anybody. But my dad worked as an educator. He knew tons and tons of stuff. He did a lot of jobs for people, building cabinets, tearing down walls, doing roofing, right? All the construction stuff. That's his deal. And there's a ton of stuff to learn there. But almost everything that he learned could fit in the same area as this class, same volume. If we were putting all of networking into a box, everything that he had to do in his life would fit in that same box. And this is just one topic, right? There's a bunch of stuff. And so dedicated to learning, knowledge in different areas becomes really important when you're going out to get a job. Certifications proves that you know a specific base information in a required area. So it's more specific, it's in networking, but it's also base information. Now, not all certifications are that way, right? You go up the certification tree, like the security stuff we're doing, and you're learning very specific information, not base information at all. But in this case, it's specific to networking, but it's base information for networking. It shows to you and to them that you have an aptitude to learn the information for the field you're going to work in. So they're looking for you to have a certification because, well, we need them to have that base knowledge. We need to know that they have an aptitude for actually learning that kind of information, right? That's important. And that makes it so you can hit the ground running. They don't have to go, okay, well, you don't know anything. So this is an RJ45 jack that goes into the back of a computer. This is what it looks like. You know, that you don't have to do that. You can hit the ground running. And you're dedicated to learning. You went through the trouble of having to learn at that higher level than just passing a class to get the certification. Now, why you need to have both? Well, that's their point of view, right? It's good to know what their point of view is. From your point of view, you're more marketable and you will get paid more in the long run. That's the truth. And this one really is tied to you're more marketable. When you're more marketable, you have more options. You can go different places and they know that, and they're going to pay you more to keep you where you are. Now, as you get going in this course, I'm just going to tell you this little story. I was very frustrated with networking when I first started. Now, you have to understand that I was at the perfect age for this computer PC revolution to happen and to see it happen and to grow with it. So I had a wonderful opportunity of growing with it. So by the time I'm in college, networking, or LAN networking, as we call it, is just fledgling. The internet's there. It's difficult to use. Most people don't even know it's there. I didn't know it's there. I didn't know what it was or why you'd want it. But it's not what it was, not what it is now. But networking was just growing. As a matter of fact, at EAC, I believe I was the first person at EAC to set up a local area network. I took a class called Data Communications, and I ran through the information so fast the instructor was like, holy crap. Now, that's just me telling you the story. I'm not bragging. Back then, there wasn't a lot of information. There really wasn't. Lots of people look at, for instance, the command line stuff that you'll even do in this class. And I'm like, oh, it's difficult. Not if you grew up with it. And also, there wasn't a whole lot of command line stuff you could do back then. I mean, DOS, disk operating system, before Windows, was pretty primitive. You learn 12 commands and that's your whole world, right? So I went through the information quick, and he's like, hey, why don't you take this stuff and set up these Macs? They had some Macs, they had some IBM personal system 2s, they had all sorts of stuff. But he had bought this equipment where you could actually plug into the back of the Mac and just basically use a serial port to create a network. And I did. It was pretty dang cool. I was sitting on one Mac and accessing the hard drive on another. And it was easy. It was really easy to do because it was Apple. Then I had a worse experience. There's a company known as Novell, still out there, and it was the heavy duty LAN world, right? So if you were a bigger organization than EAC, especially at that time, that's what you were using. You were using a product called NetWare, Novell NetWare, and you used theirs, and that was much more sophisticated. Well, my dad saw that the computers were really happening, so in his industrial arts, right, his shop class, that's what they used to call it, where you build cabinets and do that kind of thing, he was like, I need to split this, right? I need to give something to students that need to do something with their hands, so we need to not get rid of shop, but we need to add something to it. And back then, a lot of money was going to schools to use these computers. And so he went to this big training, and they set up this local area network in his shop class using NetWare. The problem is that they didn't really have a dedicated person to do this, right? And the accountant did it. And as a matter of fact, that accountant, he eventually went and got paid a ton more for not being an accountant, but for doing networking, because he had to deal with all this stuff. Well, he wasn't really helping my dad much, so I went over to try to help him. And it just confused, oh my goodness, I cannot tell you. My brain, it was just like, and then just ran out. It was just like, I don't understand what's happening. Now, that was really, really hard for me because, right, everything I picked up with computers, I could understand pretty well and pretty easily. And then this was just like, holy crap. So that was really my first time with a network. And I swore I would never do that again. So I actually became customer service rep in some very detailed software. And if you want to go into customer service, right? Go start at someplace like Amazon or any of those places and do the general stuff, and then go find a company that has a piece of software that's specific. And then when you do that, you become specialized in their software. You get paid a lot more money for that. Anyway, so I was working for them. I didn't know what to do with my career. I love to teach, but you couldn't get paid enough doing that. I was like, should I go back to school and get a master's? I was frustrated at the job I was at, not because of what I was doing, but because of the leadership. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. Well, finally I broke down and went after these new certifications that they had at the time. And so Microsoft was really a big name back then, right? And Microsoft was the Google of the day back then. And really they have tons of certifications now that you can make 60, 70, 80,000 a year off of if you go get those certifications. But anyway, so I started with an operating system certification because I loved operating systems, and it dug into stuff I never knew about, but I still enjoyed it. And then I had to bite the bullet and do networking. And I was frightened and scared to do that because of that experience that I had that just overwhelmed me. But I found halfway through networking and learning it to prep for certification. And how did I do that? Every day I came home at 5 o'clock, 8, and at 6 o'clock I started studying. And I studied from 6 to 8 every single day of the week except Saturday and Sunday. And then in a month and a half, I was ready to get certified. So I went to get that, which was called Networking Essentials, and I missed passing that test. Those Microsoft tests are really, really demanding, but I missed passing it by like 3 or 4 points. And so I turned around, scheduled the test again for a week later, and you're paying money for it, right? You're paying money for these tests. And then I studied for, I think it was another week and a half, and then I passed that test. And my love for networking came through that study process, and it came through that failure of not being able to pass that test the first time, and taking my education up a notch, right? And really, really focusing. And I found that saved me, because what happened is, I'm not joking, about 4 or 5 months later, and I've had students have this happen to them too, they don't get networking certified. They don't study to the level that I'm telling you to study to, even though I told them the same thing. They graduate, they go out, they get that lower paying job. They go, oh crap, I'm stuck here. Then they focus on networking. And once they pass that test, then boom, within 4 months, they have something that's paying them $10,000 to $20,000 more. So that's what happened to me. So I got hired as a network administrator. And I'll tell you, I walked into that job, and if I had not taken that certification, there are so many things I would not have known. And that was at a time when we did not have the internet. I could not just go, Google, can you tell me what this is? It wasn't there. Along those lines, you won't find all the answers to networking out there either, because it is a field where people have learned and been painful in their learning to gain this knowledge. And they don't just throw it all out there on the internet so you can just learn everything that there is to know. If that was the case, I would be using free stuff that you could just get for free, and it just hit certain websites. Some of the information's out there, a lot of it isn't. Right. So that's my story. And why I'm telling you that is because you're going to get into this and go, wow, this is a ton of information. I'm not sure if I can deal with this much information. You can deal with it. And you're either going to deal with it here, or you're going to deal with it in your job. It's better to do it here, because even though you think your life is really rough here, when you actually get a job and they're asking you to do stuff that you don't know about, that you're not capable of doing because you didn't study hard enough, that's a whole different level. That's right. I might be fired for this, or now I'm stuck in this full-time job that I hate. I hate this full-time job. I want out of this full-time job. And now I get to go home like McBride did and study for 2 hours every night to try to catch up with that. Where right now, you probably, for most of you, are a full-time student with a part-time job, and you think, oh, I'm so busy. Trust me, you're going to be a lot busier later. That's something everybody learns. So spend the time on this. You can do this. Unless there's something just really wrong with your brain, you're just like everybody else. And again, the difference between a doctor and a lawyer and somebody else like us is the amount of study, right? They're dedicated to go and study that stuff. They're not smarter than you. They often go after that career so that people go, oh, wow, they're so smart. But the truth is they just studied really hard to learn that. And that's why so many people get paid so well in technology, right? They get, I mean, I show literal jobs in 100 that are sitting there right in front of you that say 60,000, that say 70,000, that say 110,000, right? They're right there. Those are real jobs. And that's because these people study and they know what they're doing. And that's what they get paid for in these areas. That can be you too, and it needs to start now. And you can do that. It's a training of your brain, but you can do it. Make the sacrifice to do it. I'm here for you guys. And if you have any questions, let me know. Next video, I am going to show you how to get the information if you don't already have it.